So we're going to make Sumac Berry Ade. So we've started off with some sumac here, and I just want to take a second to talk about the different types of sumac that you're going to be using for this aid. So here we have a smooth sumac, that's what these three heads are, and they don't really have too much of a fuzz on them, and you can see the stem clearly, and the stem or the branches have no hair on them, and that's one reason why they're called smooth sumac as opposed to staghorn sumac, which is a similar shape, but these berries are a lot more fuzzy, and you probably can't see it on the camera, but the branches are also going to be fuzzy, very similar to the felt on a deer's antler when it's young, which is where it gets its name from. And this particular sumac head is not 100% ripe. As you can see, there's some white berries on it, so it might have been harvested a bit early. When you harvest sumac, you want to try to harvest it before any rain comes, because the rain will wash away the flavor. You've probably seen these as you drive along the roads. Towards the end of summer, their heads go from white to red, and they're usually in a water area, so maybe near a river or stream. And you want to be careful when you harvest anything, again harvesting sumac, that you want to know the area. Probably not harvest next to the road where there might be runoff, where there might be chemical sprays or pesticide sprays, so perhaps maybe when you go on a hike with your family, that would be the time to harvest your sumac. Sumac dries really well. You can hang it up to dry. You can also take the berries off and grind them and use them as a spice, which is what's done in a lot of Middle Eastern countries. So today we're going to be using it to make a sumac aid, which is going to be very similar to lemonade. So we're going to take our sumac heads, and we've got 3 quarts of water here. So we're going to put our sumac into this water. And this water is cool as opposed to being warm. It's important that the water is nice and cool. The sumac has something in it called a tannin, and that typically gives a bitter flavor, whereas if you keep the water cool, it won't have a bitter flavor. So now we're going to just use our hands to just kind of rub the berries a little bit. A lot of the flavor comes from the red around the berry, that as you rub, some of those red hairs or particles will kind of rub off, and they'll be left at like a gray or a black pit in the middle, or stone in the middle. So we're just rubbing to go ahead and release some of those hairs. So we're just rubbing the sumac here again to get some of the red off the berries and into the drink. So you can see these are some of the berries that are coming off. They're going to float to the top. That's great. That's what you're looking for. And kids really like to do this. It gets them involved in the kitchen. It's something safe. However, sumac is related to cashews and mango. So if someone is allergic to cashew or mango, you want to make sure that this is a beverage that they're not going to be able to partake in. So make sure that everyone's safe. And as you might be able to see, some of the water is kind of changing color from a clear to maybe a rusty red or a pink. That's a good sign. And you can make sumac aid, and it'll stay in the refrigerator for just as long as lemonade would. Again, you want to keep it cool the whole time, so if it's a hot summer day, put it in the refrigerator, or find a nice cool corner to put it in as you let the berries soak. All right. So after you've rubbed the sumac berries, you can go ahead and cover it and put it in a cool place, or you can put it right into the refrigerator. You want to again keep it in a cool place for about 45 minutes, or until the flavor is strong enough. So after that 45 minutes, taste it, and if it has a good lemony flavor like a lemonade, then you can move on to adding your maple syrup and your berries. Otherwise, just let it sit a little longer. Alright, so we've had our sumac sit in a cool area for 45 minutes, and it is a nice lemony flavor, and you might be able to see here through this container that it is a nice pink color, so that's what we're looking for. So now we're going to start adding our berries. So we have our ½ cup of blackberries and our 2 cups of blueberries. These blueberries have been frozen, and our blackberries are fresh, and that's just fine. Sometimes frozen berries are a little bit easier to get juice from. So we put them in our bowl, and now we're going to take our potato masher. You could also use a wooden spoon and just mash these up. And if you have a juicer at home, it would be perfectly fine to juice these in a juicer. And so we're going to just mash to get some of that juice to release, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of juice in here. Once you have the berries all mashed, just let it sit for a minute and take your sumac heads out. Go ahead and just put these right in here. And sometimes you can reuse these for another batch of Sumac Ade, but it just might not be as strong as the first batch. Otherwise, you can compost these sumac heads. Perfect. Don't worry about the berries for right now. We're going to strain those out in a little bit. So we're just going to set those sumac heads aside. We're going to add our berry juice. I'm going to just set these things aside. So here we have another container, and we're going to take some cheesecloth. We're going to tie it to the top. You could use a strainer if you would prefer, or if that's what you have available. Sometimes strainers aren't as fine as you'd like them to be, so sometimes it lets pieces of the sumac drift through. You could also use a coffee filter. So take our cheesecloth, fold it over the bucket a couple of times to get it nice and open over the top. Okay, so now we have our cheesecloth over our container. We're going to take our piece of twine that's going to be big enough to wrap all the way around our container. And I'm going underneath the handles here because when we start to pour the Sumac Berry Ade over the cheesecloth, sometimes it tries to move on us. So those tying it underneath the handle will keep it from going up and over. You want to make sure it's nice and tight. If you have a large enough rubber band to do this, you're more than welcome to do that. And as long as the knot doesn't slip, it doesn't really matter what kind of knot you use. We're just going to press in on the cheesecloth a little bit so that it's not like a trampoline and send some things right back. And then we're going to be nice and gentle and pour our Sumac Ade over the top. And it's going to collect some berries. At some point your cheesecloth might get a little too heavy with berries to hold its contents anymore, so you might have to clean out your cheesecloth. There we go with the berries. Now what you can do at this point, there's some little bit of juice on the top. What you can do is you can hold on to your cheesecloth and untie it real quick, or maybe just bring up the sides. Kind of quick about this. There we go. And at this point you can just give everything a good squeeze, and kids love to do this part. I mean, how often do they get to come in the kitchen and just make berry juice? So we're just getting the last bit of those berry juices out into our beverage. There we go. Hands will be pretty messy. So here we have our Sumac Berry Ade, and we're going to add our maple syrup. So we've got 2/3 cup of maple syrup. Just stir that right on in. You're going to want to give it an extra stir because, again, this isn't a hot beverage, it's a cold beverage. So it's going to take a little while for that maple syrup to get all the way around and through your Sumac Berry Ade. And that should do it. Now we're going to pour it into our container. This is a 2-quart container, and we have more than 2 quarts here, so we are going to have some left over, but this will just be for serving. Now you're ready to serve over ice.